Hello everyone, welcome to Middle Fantasy. We are doing the spoiler section of Dawnshard. So, if you don't want to get spoiled, this is the place you don't want to be, everyone. If you want to watch the spoiler-free review, there's going to be a link up top. Watch that first. Even read the book. Then come back here because I'm going to be spoiling a whole bunch of stuff within the book. So, I'm going to give you guys about 5 seconds. So, yeah. So, if you're all gone, okay, so now that they're all gone, we can talk about things that are cool and interesting and more in depth. First thing I'm going to talk about, spoiler out of the way, is that Ryzen becomes a Dawnshard. This is weird to me, because, when I think of, Dawnshards, I always thought of it maybe as a weapon, like a shard blade or, an honor blade. Maybe because it had shard in the name, and I thought that everything that when it comes to, Brandon Sanderson either has to be a weapon or a cool magic system. He's leaning more towards the magic system. Now, Ryzen has become the Dawnshard. And this is interesting because I knew just as much going into Dawnshard, a book literally called Dawnshard. And now that I know a little more, I guess it's not that much, but what a Dawnshard is almost just a piece of Aldenausium, which in theory, if I'm getting this right, and people can correct me in the comments down below, is that you have the power in essence to create reality in your own way, or even destroy the Cosmere as itself, but you're more like the conduit, almost, because you're almost the best way to put it is the teacher's computer, where when you're at school and everyone has an internet blocker, but the teacher doesn't. Risen is almost that teacher's computer. She has this ability, but yet she doesn't really know how to access it. It's more of a, better keep in the person's body. It's better to be safer in the person's body than being on a mural, which, that's what it is. So it's this dangerous weapon that's now in the hands of Ryzen, but she doesn't really know how to use it, as we find out within the Sleepless of Nilek. That's how you're saying his name, that's how I'm going to say it. And when it comes to Nilek, who is a Sleepless, he's like, yeah, this is bad. We can't let this fall into anyone's hand. This will pretty much unravel the Cosmere as itself. And that's fascinating to me because we have this dangerous weapon. Now, what does this mean for the implication of the rest of the Cosmere? I don't know. I feel like this is going to be a huge, colossal event, but also at the same time, not everything's not going to be a wizard did it, where a Dawnshard did it, you can recreate reality in essence. I feel like it's going to be a huge thing, but also at the same time, it's going to be a very underlining theme currently in the narrative. The other cool things that I found in this book is actually the relationship between Ryzen and Cord. For people that don't know, Cord is actually Rock's daughter. And she's a lot of gung-ho-ness to her. She's very, Furiosa a little bit from Mad Max Fury Road. She's the person that gets shard plate in the story. She becomes the official, unofficial guardian of Ryzen in a way. But she does not care about that because all she really cares about is the Horneater Peaks. Because now that they have, this perpendicularity that people are starting to know about, and having this ability to go into Shadesmar this way is really scary. So that's why they're collecting shard blades and stuff, not to, attack other nations, but rather to defend the Horneater Peaks. And one of the things that happens with this is that Rock is going to be going back to the Horneater Peaks to face trial because he killed Amaram. And that's a big no-no in the Unalaki because that wasn't his place to be within the succession of where he is in the family line. If you know anything about the Horneaters, they have a tier system of what child does what, almost like backup children. But Rock is more of a traditionalist, and it wasn't his place to kill Amaram, but he was forced to do it in Oathbringer, so now he's going to be facing trial. And Cord's really upset about this because she doesn't like that, he's following this way, this rigid lifestyle. Why are you following the old ways when we need to be preserving the new ways and protecting our home? And I thought that was so interesting when it comes down to the whole narrative of, we have this little region. I know there's going to be another novella eventually about the Horneaters, and I can't wait to see that. Hopefully, maybe Cord might be that person. I'd love to see it if it was Cord. I was waiting for her to actually get radiant powers because she kept seeing things like Luxbren, and she gets a shard plate, but I was waiting for her maybe to even, become a radiant herself, which would have been cool. We do see some other radiants, kinda, when it comes to, Lopen. He meets a person that's oh, my dad's a Dustbringer, he's this king. He's wait, what? You're gonna have to tell people this. It's our little secret. But now we're seeing more radiance into the world. I was actually kind of excited because my favorite order is Dustbringer. So I was oh yeah, we get another Dustbringer that isn't maybe evil. So we'll see when it comes to that. But the other huge thing that comes within the story in Dawnshard is that we actually get a POV chapter from a Sleepless. We get it from Nylek, who, is just a bug creature, but I love that we get like a POV of like the hive mind of them, even though on Roshar they're called Kremlings, but everywhere else they're called Hordlings, meaning that they have the ability to travel throughout the Cosmere and take on different shapes and sizes, but at the same time it's a hive mind, but yet each one is individual. They all have their own personalities, and I found that to be so funny. I love that type of stuff when you have like that dynamic of, okay, well, I have this plan, It's like almost like a corporate meeting a little bit. And I find that to be so funny to me, is that you have all these Kremlings, or this essence of the Sleepless. They're all bickering, and they all have to agree in one way, shape, or form. And I love that so much in the story. The other thing that I loved about the story as well is that Ryzen kind of figures out how to like walk on her own in a way. She now has a hover chair. It reminds me a lot of Professor X from Days of Future Past. Like, she now has a hover chair, and I love that. I hope there's like fan art of her as Professor X a little bit now that she has this power, and she has this amazing power that is, using Navani's research and stuff that we see within Rhythm of War a little bit. If you have seen that, is that there's like flying machines and there's more mechanisms, but she's using the ability to use it as a chair. Now that just basically means we're going to be getting Sky Pirates, and I love Sky Pirates. If you haven't had a chance to listen to Skyjacks from the Campaign podcast, that's what I have a feeling to be a taste of that type of weird craziness that's going to start occurring, possibly. Another huge thing that I liked about this is that Lopin says his third ideal, because he learns that some of the things that he says might hurt people, so he has to almost have like his own filter, because Lopin necessarily does not have a filter. Like, there's a part in the story where Lopin starts telling like disabled jokes, and even like Ryzen's like, what? No, please don't do that. Even though they're like kind of chummy about it, but because Lopin doesn't have a filter for that stuff, he doesn't realize that it might be a little hurtful until he realizes is that, sometimes my jokes might not be funny, and sometimes I have to protect people from my own jokes, because that's just something that happens, and that's how he gets his third ideal. So we get this beautiful sword that also is a dagger, and we get that little element. We also get to see a shard Warhammer, which is so cool. Like, I think that's fun that we're getting other elements. Like, Kaladin has his Sill Spear. Now we have a Radiant Hoyo who pretty much has a like sledgehammer or a warhammer, or I guess it would call it a charmer, a shard hammer. And it's funny because the way that he gets it, they're fighting this giant sea monster, and it's just a giant almost crab. So he has a giant crab hammer. He's like, I'm gonna smash it. And I like that. I mean, when it comes to the story, I like how they actually branch it into the little interlude from Oathbringer when it comes to the original ship that came in, with the Ardent turning into smoke, and how even in the cave, all the little soulcasters they find, one of them is the smoke one. They're just trying to hide all that stuff. And I like how there's like these little nods. They even tried to do the same trick again of poisoning them with the food. And I like that when it comes to that in the narrative, is that you're not going to fall for it again. I love Ryzen's deducing of how like Nylek is pretty much the culprit, rather than trying to set up that Cord is the person that's trying to sow discontent, because I loved Ryzen's rational thinking when it comes to all the sea omens, because it was actually reminding me a lot of like the Gentleman Bastards, the second book, when you have like, it's a bad omen to have a dead cat on board, or you're not having a cat. And we see that like it's like pirate mythology a little bit here. Like, oh, you need to have a sky eel while it's dead. Oh, well, it's a good omen, I guess. And then we have the thing with the Great Shell dying, and it's more of, it's the Kremling, like, illumination. It's like the, it's the deceit, but she twists it on her head and it's like, oh no, we were meant to find it. It's actually a good symbol when they start to tow it in. A very irrational thing for a person, like, any rational person would just turn around and go. Ryzen twists it on its head, and turns out that it's an illusion. And when it comes down to it, that's like Ryzen's speciality, is she's able to flip situations and keep everyone calm, especially like a mutiny could occur. And I found that I was waiting for the mutiny part, and I was waiting for the horrible sea storm where she gets knocked off. We kind of get that a little bit, but we get those types of tropes almost subverted in a little way. And I love those little relationships, especially between everyone. Actually, I really like the Lopin chapter where we're first introduced to him in Urithiru, and he's like taking the prince around, and then you meet him and Kaladin, And Kaladin's just pretty much like, you're not, because you're in his head, you're actually getting like in this third person view that's just from Lopin's perspective, and how much people see Kaladin in this way, especially being the leader, but also being like, oh, Lopin, oh, why are you doing this? I picked you. Just go. You're the only person that knows how to swim. And we get those little elements that I find to be so cute and charming throughout this narrative. And I want to see what the bigger implications are, especially within Rhythm of War, with like Rock having to go after the Horneater Peaks. Now the stuff with like the deceit, especially when it comes to how Ryzen and the Sleepless come to an understanding of, okay, you guys can use the island. I'll be the Dawnshard, but we'll tell this fantastical tale about how all these soul casters and that shard plate that Cord has now was the real prize. I love that they're basing this off of like a lie, but a very believable lie, rather than this giant mural that shoots into my eyes and gives me these godlike powers of sheer destruction. But here are my rules. Ryzen, you cannot become a Knight's Radiance because that would be bad, and we have to preserve a lot of things. I liked how, you know, Ryzen's a merchant. She comes up with deals and negotiations. Again, like I think in the review I said, she's a lot like Jean-Luc Picard. And hers like, okay, this is what I'll help you guys with when it comes to Sleepless. I'll teach you guys to be more human, to pass as human, because you guys are all terrible at being at it. I mean, your tattoos kind of give you away a little bit, but also when it comes to your eating and all these little things, I kind of like that she's going to have like a ship, sort of, with Sleepless on it, but also at the same time, she has this power. She now can float around. Even when it comes to like her Larkin is going to go to like chasm feed sizes when it comes to how big it's going to get. So I'm waiting for all the Daenerys Targaryen stuff of Ryzen like sitting on Cherry's back as they destroy Stormlight itself. I'm waiting for that type of big epic scope of stuff. And at the end of the day, those are the things that I love about this when it comes to all the spoilery stuff. Like, those little minute things really add to the story. You know, again, the humor can be hit or miss, but I really enjoyed this little novel for the adventure that you go on, because it's a small adventure but has this huge implication not only for Roshar, but for the Cosmere itself. And at the end of the day, it's a solid book. It's a solid little novella. I mean, technically it's like a novel because Brandon Sanderson went ham a little bit. So it's a novella, like just add an extra L to it and you're good to go. But in the end, I really did enjoy this. I thought this was a standout book, and everyone should read it when it comes out. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching this spoiler-filled video that I just made. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked this video, consider subscribing down below. I'd really appreciate that. You're all amazing. This community has just been the nicest to me, and I can't thank you all enough. So thank you all so much. And like always, may your food and drink ever be tasteful, and may your books be filled with fantasy and adventure. Well, everyone, see ya! Bye!